Hello everyone! Welcome to the first live stream on the new second channel. So far, most things seem to be working well. For some reason, I can't read the chat through my app. For streaming, I have to go to the website, but I mean, I guess that's a easy solution. Don't know why that is, but hello, Jeff, Phil, definitely a human, I totally believe you, Daniel, Natasha, thank you guys, Julie. It's so weird seeing some of y'all's names in normal colors, because it's a different channel and this channel doesn't have membership, but thank you guys for subscribing to the new channel. This feels really, it's nice to kind of feel like it's just a chill spot for the cool kids and not like an enormous platform that has way too many eyeballs on me at all times. It's so weird. Jeff, don't laugh at my headphones. I know, they broke on both sides. I'm gonna see if I can hot glue them, but honestly, I don't know that that's gonna do much to help. I wonder if I can just pop the live chat out and not look at myself twice, because that looks so weird to me. Alright, there we go. Now I just have the live chat. God, in all my stress trying to get this ready to go, I forgot the most important part, which is the book that we're reading. We're reading more of Female General Eldest Princess today. Cause, I don't know, why not? Hello, Anna! Welcome. Cool kids translates to the gays. That's not wrong. That's not wrong. No, you're right. Let's see here. Last time, I believe we ended on chapter 6 or 7? Let me double check. If you haven't noticed, I have uploaded everything from the other channel that's moving. All of it's finally moved. And because it's now focused on books, I can arrange it a little differently. All the books are in their own separate sections, their own playlists, unless they are by the same author. In the case of, basically, Koji Suzuki, all the Ring books will be in one section. And all the Hideyuki Kikuchi books will be in one section, because splitting those up would just be too much. Jeff, no, don't worry. Oh my goodness. I will come up with something. I'm looking to invest in a couple of, pieces of equipment since y'all were so kind to throw money my way and I have some extra. I'm trying to research what I think needs updated. Oh, oops, you're right, Phil. I did say we were gonna do Heaven's Official's Blessing. God, where is my brain today? Because I have that giveaway I was doing. I did a giveaway on Twitter, which if you want to donate between now and the end of this video, I will count that as well. If you donate to an Asian charity, I tweeted a bunch of links. I don't have them on me, but if you do that and you share the receipt, I put you in a bucket to win like 5 or 6 different pieces of Heaven Official Blessing, keychains basically, and a button. Leftovers from my, big Chinese purchase that I made. I sell them on YouTube, yeah. I sell them on, the internet, and I had a bunch of extras, and I was like, you know what, that sounds like a good idea. So, we are on chapter 63 of Heaven Official's Blessing. I can't believe my brain today. Let's see here. If we pull up our, let's see, chapter 63. So, what happened last time? It's been a minute. We were back in the past, dealing with the history of the characters, the previous events before all the events of Book 1. Xie Lian is a prince of the country of Xianlu. His cousin, Qirong, is a total brat and keeps fucking up everything. They just had this big festival, basically, where it kind of sort of went wrong and he saved a kid's life. He doesn't feel like it went wrong, because obviously he's like, I gotta save the kid, but all the royals are like, you did the festival wrong! Oh no! Sorry, Bob, was that too loud? And then, Feng Xin is one of his buddies, his kind of bodyguard, who, hangs around with him. He's also another noble. How do I do a donation? It's not a donation to me, understand. It is for, let me see if I can pull up the tweet that had a bunch of links. Any, Asian support group. There was a bunch of GoFundMes for folks who suffered due to the events of last week. I shared a bunch of links of those, and I just wanted to, you know, try and do my part if I could, since, obviously, it was a horrible tragedy, and my country has too many of those. But anyway, let me see. Here is one. Let's see if I can find the one that has a big list of them. I should have remembered. I've just been so off all day today. I don't know, man. Like, no, Bob! Where are you going? That's a GoFundMe. Where's the big link that had all the shit? Here we go. Let's put this over here. Here is a link that lists a bunch of different places that you can help out that need help and stuff like that. So, do that by the end of the thing. You can DM me the receipt on Discord or email or what have you. And then at the end of the video, we'll do a little draw to see who gets it. I'll have to show y'all the keychains. They're super cute. So yeah. We're in the past. Feng Xin is his friend and bodyguard. The other friend, Mu Qing, is another student of martial arts with them, but he comes from a poor background and is not as, I guess, well off, and it leads to some... What the heck? What is... Okay, here we go. Leads to some issues with other people in the martial arts school that they're in, the temple. He gets bullied for being poor, basically, and that's kind of the struggle we're dealing with right now, is him being bullied and having things go wrong because of his background. Xie Lian trying to help him without, like, making him feel bad about it. Feng Xin doesn't really understand because he doesn't come from that background, and Qi Rong is just a brat. So, let's see here. We are just at the part where everybody walked in, or like the three main characters, I believe, to visit the queen, Xie Lian's mother. So, chapter 63. Lost Red Pearl, Inadvertent Eyes Red with Desire, part 4. Xie Lian was curious. Why can't I drink this? The queen reached for the small, jaded cup and took it from him, poured a bit of its contents on her handkerchief, and pressed it gently a few times on her face. Mount Saisong recently sent in a batch of fresh fruit. I don't like cherries, but there was a method of making it into pastes for facials, so I squeezed some for fun. There's not much use for it, and I was about to have it thrown out, so I can't possibly have you drink it. Xie Lian smiled as he listened, but suddenly recalled the events of the day before. There were very few times in a year where Mu Qing's mother could taste cherries, and Mu Qing himself would get bullied just trying to pick some. It was something of a sensitive topic, and Xie Lian was afraid Mu Qing would be uncomfortable listening to it, so he smiled and changed the subject. Then do you have anything I could eat? The queen chuckled. The way you make it sound, others will think I starve you. But you've been a picky eater ever since you were young. I can't plump you up. You've gotten so thin since you entered the mountain. Today you'll eat whatever I tell you to, no fuss. The mother and son conversed for a while, and the queen asked about the incident during the heavenly procession, sounding quite concerned. By the Guoxi's report, it sounded serious. What's going to happen? Will you be punished? Xie Lian didn't have the chance to answer before Qi Rong cut in. Huh, that wasn't Cousin Crown Prince's fault. The one who fell off the wall wasn't him. If anyone should be punished, it should be that little fiend. What little fiend? Xie Lian thought in annoyance. He hadn't corrected Qi Rong, but the queen laughed. Just then she noticed the two outside the manor. Who's the child next to Feng Xin? It's the first time I've seen another person by your side. Xie Lian replied cheerfully. That's Mu Qing. He was the one who played the ghost on stage yesterday. Hearing this, Qi Rong slightly raised his brows. The queen said, Really? Have him come in so I can see his face. Feng Xin can come in too. No. No leave. Only stay, Bob. You must stay. I don't know if y'all can see. He's trying to leave. Thus, Feng Xin and Mu Qing entered the chamber and knelt before the queen. She took her time looking over Mu Qing and said to Xie Lian, I thought he fought rather well yesterday. A good, courteous child. Looking at his face, you'd think he'd be a gentle minister. Who knew he could be that tenacious using a saber? Xie Lian grinned. Right? I think he's good too. Qi Rong, on the other hand, commented coolly. Oh, the ghost from yesterday was him. Xie Lian heard his tone and felt dread. Sure enough, the next second, Qi Rong suddenly exploded, snatched the small jaded cup from the little tea table, and swung it at Mu Qing's head. Here, your reward! Fortunately, Xie Lian was faster and smacked Qi Rong's hand, forcing him to drop the cup so the splash didn't make it to Mu Qing's face. Xie Lian pulled him back by the collar. Qi Rong, what are you doing? Even whilst being held, Qi Rong was still rampant and raging. Cousin, I'm helping you discipline an impudent servant. Before you made it yesterday, he sure was enjoying himself, taking in all the limelight. Who the fuck do you think you are? The star of the heavenly procession? Gonna overthrow the heavens too? The queen was stunned. Rong, what are you doing? Mu Qing's face was spared the splash, but his clothes hadn't been. Because the queen hadn't given word, he remained kneeling on the floor, his face grim and pale. Xie Lian passed Qi Rong to Feng Xin. Don't let him hit anyone. Feng Xin only used one hand to restrain Qi Rong, but Qi Rong was kicking and punching, spitting as he shouted. And who the fuck do you think you are to have the fucking nerve to touch me so casually? Xie Lian could feel his head aching. Qi Rong, you've gotten more and more out of control. Then he returned to the queen. Mother, I forgot to mention something. Please, take away his golden carriage. Qi Rong was shocked and yelled, No! I'm sorry, Bob. I'm sorry. I won't yell anymore. No! Why? That's Auntie's birthday gift to me! Even if it is, it must be confiscated, Xie Lian said. We almost ran into trouble on the streets. Best not to touch it again until you learn how to drive properly. The queen awed and asked, Trouble? What trouble? Xie Lian retold the crazy saga of Qi Rong's driving. Qi Rong was furious, his eyes red around the rim. Cousin Crown Prince is wrong! I didn't run into a single person! Xie Lian snorted. That's because someone stopped you. Qi Rong struggled out of Xie Lian's hands and ran out of Qifeng Manor in a mad fit, not turning back even when the queen called for him. I love that the Yard people like to wait until I'm streaming. Thank you, Yard people. My luck. Yeah, I think the food thing was the gardens with all the cherries are property of the Imperial? I don't know if they're Imperial Palace, but the property of the palace. And so the queen's like, I'm so tired of cherries. We have them all the time. But of course, someone poor like Mu Qing can't even take a handful without getting punished. Like, Xie Lian's starting to notice, the issues because of Mu Qing and the behavior of Qi Rong, who's so spoiled. He's starting to see the cracks in the facade of the palace, but he's not at a point where he's really doing anything about it. And I think that it's going to take far more for him to really see and understand the issues with the world he's in. There's a lot of kind of critique of society going on here for sure. I wouldn't even call it subtle because it's pretty there, but like it runs through the story, and even when it kind of vanishes for a little bit, it'll come back. She sighed sadly. I'll talk to him tomorrow about confiscating his carriage. The child had wanted a coach for the longest time, so when his birthday came around, I saw he was still desperately wanting one, so I gifted him. So who knew he'd turn out like this? Had I known, I wouldn't have given it to him. Why must he have a carriage? Xie Lian wondered. He said it's so he could go to Mount Taisong any time to bring you home, the queen replied. Xie Lian fell silent, learning that at the end of the day it was a gesture of goodwill. After a moment he spoke. It's better to find him a good teacher and restrain that temper. He can't keep going on like this. The queen sighed. And what teacher can restrain him? He only ever listens to you. We could hardly have him enter the mountain to go cultivate with you. Besides, the Guoshi would die before taking him as a disciple. Xie Lian found the idea both hilarious and horrifying and shook his head. I just realized the music stopped playing. No, I just can't hear it. Are my headphones officially dead? Okay, no, there it is. With a temper like that, if he should ever enter the royal holy pavilion, he would raise hell for sure. Both the mother and son were deeply troubled by this and couldn't think of any ideas, so they let it go for the time being. That evening, after having seen his parents and caught up, Xie Lian rose to leave the palace. Everyone knew the Crown Prince was deeply obsessed with cultivation, and ever since he entered the Royal Holy Pavilion, he visited his parents less and less. The king didn't say much on the matter, but the queen was always reluctant to let him go. After leaving the palace, Xie Lian casually strolled around the royal capital and accompanied Mu Qing to make a visit to his home as suggested the day before. Y'all don't hear any music? It's supposed to be playing. Okay. Says it's coming through. Oh, it's very quiet. And it's also not coming through. Okay, now it is. Let me turn that up a little bit. Hey, Pablo. Just saw you're over on Twitch. Welcome. Let me pull this back up. Alright, hopefully y'all should be able to hear it now. Oh, you're right. The channel chat on the sidebar is not there, I guess because it's changed over. I'll have to see about how I would make that change back and forth. I guess if I create two, that should do it. Okay. The opulent, tall red gates and the impoverished slums were a street away from each other. Mu Qing's home was situated in a dark alley of the most bustling area of the royal capital. The three of them had just turned into the alley when 5 or 6 children in rags surrounded them, calling out, "Guga! Guga's back!" Xie Lian was confused at first, wondering why they would call strangers Guga, but then he discovered they were calling Mu Qing. The children called out to him sweetly, but Mu Qing ignored them. "There's nothing this time. Don't call me anything." His voice was wooden, but his voice wasn't cold. His face was wooden, but his voice wasn't cold. Blah. He turned to Xie Lian. "Don't mind them, Your Highness. They're just kids from the block." However, the group of children was obviously very comfortable around him, having grown up playing together, and they weren't afraid of him at all. They giggled and surrounded them, their dirty little hands extended, begging for munchies from Mu Qing. Finally, Mu Qing reached for the gem-like cherries in his bag and handed them out. Feng Xin was astonished seeing this, as if Mu Qing doing anything of the sort was a miracle. After all, Mu Qing had a pretty boy face that looked extremely selfish and cold-hearted, the type that, despite seeing someone die from starvation on the streets, would still keep a tight hold on all his food. Xie Lian, on the other hand, wasn't surprised at all. At first, he'd also wanted to find something to give the children, but he didn't usually carry sweets on his person, and having Feng Xin give coins was too much like dismissing beggars that Xie Lian didn't think it appropriate. Suddenly, there was a boom of galloping noise coming from the main streets, the long, shrieking whinny of a horse, and people screaming. The three of them stopped. Then Xie Lian rushed out of the alley. All around the main street was chaos, stalls toppled and people on the ground. The pedestrians were running to get away. Apples and pears rolled all over. He hadn't figured out what was happening when he heard the crazed laughter of a young man. "Get out of my way! Get out of my way! I don't give a shit if any of you get trampled!" Feng Xin. "No, Bob!" Bob's tired of my yelling. He's going to lay down somewhere quieter. Feng Xin swore. "It's Qi Rong again!" Sure enough, Qi Rong stood atop that glamorous golden coach, his expression malicious, lashing his whip wildly, the white horse howling from the welting. "Stop him!" Xie Lian shouted. The golden carriage whooshed by them, and Feng Xin acknowledged, understood, and charged on ahead. Xie Lian was going to go check for any wounded from all the toppled stalls and knocked over pedestrians left behind by Qi Rong's mad trail, when suddenly he noticed something wrong. He whipped his head around and saw that behind the large golden coach, something was being dragged along with a thick, long hemp rope. At the end of the rope was a gunny sack, and in the sack there seemed to be something struggling. It looked like there was a person in the sack. That moment, Xie Lian could only feel his blood run cold. The next second, he rushed forward. From all the whipping, the white horse was dashing like it was running for its life, spinning the wheels of the carriage furiously. Feng Xin went to hold the horse back, but probably wouldn't be able to stop it immediately. Xie Lian raced up to the carriage in only a few steps, unsheathed his sword, and struck down. The rope snapped in two, and the gunny sack dropped to the ground, rolled, and came to a halt. Xie Lian bent forward to inspect it. The gunny sack had been dragged for who knows how long and was ripped from all the scraping. It was extremely dirty, covered in blood, looking like a dead body bag. Another swing from his sword, and the rope tied around the opening was cut. He opened the bag and looked, and there was indeed someone inside. What's more, it was a young child. Xie Lian ripped open the entire sack. The child within was curled into a ball, hugging his head tightly. His filthy clothes were covered either in giant footprints or fresh blood. Even his hair was tangled with blood. He was a mess, and it was obvious he'd been beaten heavily by someone, so much so that he didn't even look human anymore. Judging by his size, he was only 7 or 8, a very small creature, shaking as if a layer of his skin had been forcibly peeled off. Truly incredible he was still alive after such a violent beating. Xie Lian reached out a hand to feel his neck, and found the pulse wasn't too weak and sighed a breath of relief. He immediately picked up the small body, turned around, and yelled, enraged, "Feng Xin! Arrest Qirong!" He could not believe that something like this could happen in the kingdom of Xianle. Under the light of day, on the main street, a member of the nobility stuffed a live human in a gunny sack to be dragged behind a horse carriage. If he hadn't seen and stopped it, the small child would have been dragged to death that day. Some distance away came the sound of whinnying and the angry roars of Qirong, and soon after Feng Xin yelled back, "He's been stopped!" Xie Lian rushed towards them in time to hear Qirong howl in rage. "You fucking lowly servant, dare hurt me! Who gave you the balls?" Turns out Feng Xin couldn't stop him, so he tried to snatch the reins from him instead. Of course Qirong wouldn't let him, so the two pulled back and forth, and in a moment of carelessness, Feng Xin bumped and pushed him off the carriage. He fell to the ground and rolled a few times, his knees scraped. Seeing he was surrounded by bystanders, he felt nothing but rage and embarrassment. However, Xie Lian cut in. "I did!" Qirong opened and closed his mouth a couple times before finally crying, "Cousin Crown Prince!" Xie Lian said angrily, "Look at what you've done! Qirong, I really—" Just then, he suddenly felt the child in his arms twitch, seemingly to have loosened the hands hugging his head and was peeking at him from the gap between his elbows. Xie Lian immediately restrained his anger and lowered his head to soothe him in a gentle voice. "How do you feel? Do you feel pain anywhere especially?" The child was amazingly still conscious, not fainted from pain nor frozen in shock, and shook his head. Xie Lian saw that half of his bloody little face poked out and was about to check for other head injuries, but the child firmly covered the other half of his face with his hands, stubbornly refusing to show him. "Yeah, Qirong's a little dick. He's a douchebag." Gandalf, have you come to join us? Come to say hi? Say hello. Hello. You gonna settle down and get comfy? Go ahead. It's cool. That's what the spot's for. Say, "I don't know, Mom. Why are you talking to me? I'm embarrassed. I don't know." I forgot, is this our boy? I don't know, maybe it is someone we know. Chapter 64, Lost Red Pearl, Inadvertent Eyes Red with Desire, Part 5. Xie Lian soothed. "Don't be afraid. I'm not going to do anything. I only want to check your injuries." The child, however, pressed his hands harder, revealing only one large obsidian eye, looking panicked. But this panic didn't seem like he was afraid he would get beaten, but rather that something would be discovered. Looking at this little face half covered with only an eye, Xie Lian suddenly thought he might have seen this child somewhere and squinted his eyes. Qirong saw his upset face and explained, "Cousin Crown Prince, that little fiend ruined your grand ceremony yesterday, so I avenged you. Don't worry, I was careful. He won't die." Sure enough, the child held in his arms was the one who fell from the city wall during the Shangyuan heavenly ceremonial procession the day before. No wonder Xie Lian thought he looked familiar. The little child hadn't even changed. He was still wearing the same outfit as the day before, but because of all the beatings and draggings, he was filthier and looked nothing like he had, not even like he was the same person. Xie Lian couldn't hold back his anger anymore. "Who told you to avenge me? It has nothing to do with the child. It wasn't his fault." Qi justified himself. "Of course it's his fault. If not for him, you wouldn't have gotten scolded by the guoxi." This ruckus was growing out of hand, and the crowd watching was becoming bigger, all whispering to each other. Just then, Mu Qing approached too, and Qi pointed his whip at him, his expression laced with hostility. "And you lowly servant. Just by the look of him, I can tell he doesn't know his place. If you don't discipline him, sooner or later he's going to overthrow you and step on you, the master. I helped you discipline him, but you turned around and defended him instead and told on me too. Now Uncle and Auntie not only disregarded my goodwill, they even confiscated my carriage. Cousin, that was my birthday gift. I've wanted it for 2 years." Mu Qing gave Qi an unreadable, sweeping look. Xie Lian puffed a laugh from rage. "I don't need your goodwill, not like this. Are you really avenging me, or are you avenging yourself?" Qi said, "Cousin, why would you say that to me? And what have I done wrong in following after you?" Xie Lian couldn't argue with him. "Qi, listen here. From now on, you're not allowed to touch this child, not even a finger. Do you hear me?" Just then, Xie Lian suddenly felt a pull on his neck. He was just at the height of his fury and was startled. He looked down and saw the young child had buried his face in his chest, his 2 hands tightly encircled around Xie Lian's neck. Xie Lian felt him shaking uncontrollably and thought he was hurting. He asked hurriedly, "What's wrong?" That young child was covered all over in mud, grime, and blood, filthy and unkempt, and it all smeared on Xie Lian's white robes. But Xie Lian didn't mind at all. He gently patted the child's back to comfort him and said in a gentle voice, "I'll go take you to the doctors right now." The child didn't respond, but he hugged Xie Lian even tighter. He was tense and wouldn't let go, as if he was holding on to a lifeline. Qi saw that Xie Lian wouldn't acknowledge his goodwill, his heart solely on outsiders, then saw the kid had sullied Xie Lian's robes with the bloody, muddy shit, and his anger flared. He raised the whip and was about to lash the back of the child's head. Feng Xin was standing on the side, and in a split second, his leg flew out and kicked Qi right on the arm. There was a loud crack, and Qi screamed. The whip fell to the ground, and his right arm dropped limply at an abnormal angle. He was frozen in disbelief, and it was a while before he slowly raised his head, glaring at Feng Xin, enunciating each word. "You dare break my arm?" The words were extremely cold. It was only after he had kicked that Feng Xin realized what he'd done, and his face changed. But Mu Qing's face changed more. No matter how much they detested Qi behind his back, that was one thing. But as a personal guard, to have transgressed and accidentally broken the arm of royalty was something completely different. Just then, Xie Lian had his hands full with the child, and behind him was packed with onlookers, so he couldn't dodge. But if he had dodged, it would have been a piece of cake. Only Qi came at him with such aggression so out of the blue, Feng Xin moved too fast without thinking, and Xie Lian didn't have the chance to stop him. Now everything was in more of an uproar, and Xie Lian didn't have time to think. His clothes were getting soaked in blood. If they delayed any longer, the child might die right there. Xie Lian made a split-second decision, inhaled deeply, and shouted in a clear voice, "Everyone! If anyone was pulled into this incident today, please record any damages and loss. I will take all responsibility without fail." Then he turned to Feng Xin and Mu Qing. "Save the child first. Take Qi away and don't let him continue havoc outside." Finishing his instructions, Xie Lian ran towards the palace with the child in his arms. Feng Xin received the command, his expression back to normal, and picked up the raging Qi before following after Xie Lian. The soldiers guarding the palace thought it was strange to see the crown prince racing back, having only left a short while ago, but naturally they wouldn't stop him. Thus, Xie Lian ran straight to the medical pavilion and entered the infirmary, leaving Feng Xin and Mu Qing outside the door with Qi under arrest. The crown prince rarely returned to the palace and rarely made demands, so the imperial doctors naturally rushed over speedily. Xie Lian placed the young child in a chair and said, "Thanks in advance, everyone. The child was beaten by a number of adults, got stuffed in a gunny sack and dragged on the road. Please, check for me if there are any head injuries first. That's the most important thing." The imperial medical team had never seen a royal or noble bring a dirty, wild child for them to heal before. But they also knew they needed to do whatever they were told to, and they acknowledged Xie Lian's direction. One of them spoke. "Put your hands down first, little kid." However, although the young child was docile in Xie Lian's arms the whole time, he started struggling then and firmly covered the right side of his face, refusing to let go no matter what. No matter how skilled the imperial doctors were, if the patient didn't cooperate, there wasn't anything they could do. The doctors looked to Xie Lian. "Your Highness, how—" Xie Lian raised a hand. "He's probably afraid of strangers. Don't worry, let me." The child was sitting in a chair, and Xie Lian couldn't meet his eyes, so he bent forward and inclined his head. "What's your name?" The large eye of the child stared at him intently. His obsidian black pupil reflected a snow-white silhouette. The gaze, if it must be described, was exactly like Feng Xin had said, possessed by the devil. Shouldn't be the gaze of a child. It was for a moment before the child lowered his head. "Hong." His voice was tiny and soft, mumbled as if he didn't want to say it, as if he was a little embarrassed. Xie Lian only sort of heard the word Hong and said again, "How old are you?" 10, the child replied. Xie Lian was only asking offhandedly, hoping to lower his guard, but hearing he responded with 10, he was startled. He thought, "I thought he was only 7 or 8, but he's 10? The child's truly weak and emaciated." After a pause, Xie Lian smiled softly. "The doctors will see to your wounds now. Don't be afraid. Lower your hands, okay?" The child heard, but hesitantly shook his head. "Why not?" Xie Lian asked. He was silent for a while before replying, "Ugly." His response was just the one word, and no matter how Xie Lian soothed, he refused to move his hands. Xie Lian promised he wouldn't think him ugly, he wouldn't look, turning around wouldn't do either. Such a young age, but such obstinance. Without much choice, the imperial doctors could only ask him a few questions, have him recognize a number of fingers, make sure he didn't feel faint or have any headaches, make sure he understood what he saw and what he thought, and then tend to his physical wounds. As the imperial doctors worked, they became more and more awed. Xie Lian guarded on the side, hearing the sounds of wonder, and asked, "How is he, everyone?" One of the imperial doctors couldn't help but ask, "Your Highness, did this little kid really get beaten and dragged on the road in a gunny sack?" Xie Lian was speechless. "Why should that be false?" The imperial doctor replied, "If it really was the case, then amazing. I've never seen anyone so tenacious. He has 5 broken ribs and a broken leg, a number of injuries, and big and small. And even add it all together, he's conscious and converses while sitting up. Even adults would find this difficult to do, never mind a 10-year-old child." Hearing how severe the injuries were, Xie Lian became even more furious at Qirong. He looked at the child and saw he was sitting there on the chair as if he felt no pain and was peeking at him with that large black left eye. When he noticed he was caught staring by Xie Lian, he immediately turned his head away. Let's all murder Qirong. Chapter 65. Lost Red Pearl, Inadvertent Eyes Red with Desire. Seeing this, for some reason, Xie Lian thought he was both silly and pitiful, and then turned to ask, "Will his injuries all heal?" One of the imperial doctors wrapped new layers of bandages around the child's head and replied, "Not a problem." Xie Lian finally felt relieved and nodded. "Thank you for all your hard work." Just then an attendant entered to notify them of the imminent arrival of His Majesty, the King and Queen. Each of the imperial doctors immediately stood up and exited the infirmary to greet them. Xie Lian moved the child to the bed and said, "Lie down for a bit and rest." He then thought the child was scared of strangers, and so many people crowding in might scare him, so Xie Lian lowered the bedside curtains before rising to his feet, too. A number of guards and attendants surrounded the king and queen as they walked into the pavilion. The queen's face was pale. "My dear child, Why did you return all of a sudden after having left the palace? Were you hurt outside? Mother, please, be at ease, Xie Lian said. I wasn't hurt. It was someone else who was wounded. Just then, Qi Rong called out from the corner, Auntie, save me! Only then did the queen notice Qi Rong on the side, firmly held by Feng Xin and arrested, and was shocked. She was only worried about the well-being of her son and completely ignored anything else. But now that she saw, she asked, Rong heir, what's happened? The king, on the other hand, slightly knitted his brows. Feng Xin, why are you holding Prince Xiaojing like a criminal? When His Majesty arrived, Feng Xin should have bowed in greeting like Mu Qing and all the others, but because he had Qi Rong in hand, he couldn't let go, and entered into an awkward situation. Xie Lian spoke up. It was under my command. Qi Rong held up his right arm. Auntie, my arm is broken! The queen hadn't had the chance to sympathize before Xie Lian cut in harshly. You broke an arm, but what about the child? What child? The king asked. A 10-year-old child, Xie Lian asked. Powerless, vulnerable, and already weak. Qi Rong sent his lackeys to beat him. If not for his tenacity, he would have been beaten to the death on the spot. Qi Rong looked as if he'd heard a joke, his eyes widening. A powerless, vulnerable 10-year-old child, weak. Cousin, you don't know how vicious, how savage, how spunky that little fiend was. He only pretends to be pathetic in front of you. I called for 5 or 6 guys, and they still couldn't catch the brat. He thrashed and bit them until they were bloody all over. If he didn't anger me, why would I have dragged him behind the horse carriage? Hearing this, both the king and queen's faces dropped. Xie Lian took a deep breath and shouted, Enough! Do you think what you've done is impressive? Qi Rong wasn't one to shy away from showing his face. He was so arrogant and ostentatious that there was no reason that the citizens of the... Wait, did that jump to the right page? There was no reason the citizens of the capital did not see them. After they'd seen, there was no reason he wouldn't become the talk of the city. The king and queen shared a look, his expression slightly blue. Take Prince Xiaojing away. Doctor, see to his arm. The golden carriage will be permanently confiscated. You are to be detained and reflect on your actions for a month without release. The guard behind him immediately acknowledged the order and moved forward to take Qi Rong. Only then did Feng Xin let him go. Qi Rong no longer cared and humphed. Take it, take it. I already knew today would be the last chance to drive it. Hearing that he possessed no repenting heart, the queen sighed sadly. Xie Lian spoke up. Looks like with only a month of detention to reflect, he will do this again. There needs to be stricter discipline. Qi Rong was taken aback and stammered angrily. Cousin Crown Prince, you... But the next moment he switched gears. Fine. I admit this time was my fault. No matter how His Majesty punishes me, Qi Rong has no complaints. His next words changed the subject's direction. However, shouldn't Cousin Crown Prince's servant also be punished? Uncle, Auntie, my arm was broken by that Feng Xin. Hearing this, the king instantly moved his gaze to Feng Xin, looking outraged. Feng Xin lowered his head and Mu Qing inconspicuously moved 2 steps away. The king said coldly, Feng Xin, you are the Crown Prince's bodyguard. The Crown Prince treats you well and regards you highly, but have you forgotten your place? What is this arrogance? Your duty is to serve His Highness. Is this how you serve him? You dare raise a hand against the Crown Prince's cousin, Prince Xiaojing? Hearing his words, Feng Xin was ready to kneel, but Xie Lian stopped him. Don't kneel. Feng Xin obeyed Xie Lian's commands first and foremost. Even under the king's orders, his priority was His Highness, and so he immediately straightened again. Seeing this, the king became even more upset. It's true Feng Xin broke Qi Rong's arm, but the reason was to protect the master, Xie Lian said. Besides, Qi Rong was at fault first, not Feng Xin, so why must he kneel? It doesn't matter why, the king said. Either way, he has offended Prince Xiaojing. There's a difference between masters and servants, a distinction of superior and inferior. Never mind if I, the king, was to make him kneel. If I were to punish him with 100 lashings, there wouldn't be anything inappropriate about it. Although the king wasn't as affectionate towards Xie Rong as the queen was, Xie Rong was still nevertheless of the royal household, never to be disobeyed or offended. Xie Rong knew this very well, and said with a sidelong glance, "No need for a lashing punishment. He belongs to Cousin Crown Prince. I don't want to make things awkward. As long as he breaks his own arm and kneels to kowtow before me 3 times, I can let this go." The king nodded slowly, looking to consent the decision. However, Xie Lian spoke up. "If you must punish Feng Xin, you must punish me first. He's my servant, first of all. He's done nothing wrong, and second of all, if he was at fault, it was still done under my orders, so I will take punishment on his behalf." What a man. Hearing him say this, the king became outraged once more. All fathers and sons in the world must go through this change. Wait, is it skipping a page? I guess not. It just seems like a weird jump there. Yeah, the king's being a king and being a douchebag. Like, oh, you know, he trampled through the city, destroying tons of property and damaging the innocent civilians, dragging a beaten child to death behind him, but you should be whipped for daring to stop him. Oh, God. All fathers and sons in the world must go through this change. When the son was young, they would all idolize their fathers as the great hero on earth, a personal role model, their worship a parent. However, when the son matured to a certain age, they would start to question everything their father did, even brew revulsion, until in the end, neither side would acknowledge each other. To enter Mount Taisong for training, Xie Lian's fundamental objective was to improve his martial arts and search for the direction of his heart. However, he never cared for where he trained, nor what identity. The word Dao for cultivation meant exactly as it appeared, to walk the path. As long as one's heart was set on the path with one mind, then training could be done anywhere. He didn't need to follow any dictated norms, nor enter the Royal Holy Pavilion. But there was another reason why Xie Lian begged to train on Mount Taisong, and that was because he felt he didn't really get along with his father. I'm not going to get along with Gandalf, who's walking in front of the book. Gandhi, you come here. Captured. Hello. You sit with me now? Yes, you sit. As the Honorable Crown Prince of Xianlu, the moment Xie Lian was born... Aw, Bob, you don't want to share my lap? The moment Xie Lian was born, the king of Xianlu had already drawn out every detail of the path of his life. It was all right when he was young. A child had few worries, and Xie Lian only needed his parents to build gold foil palaces with him, to play around and laugh. As the years went by, Xie Lian felt more and more his father wasn't only a father, but also the ruler of a kingdom, and many of their thoughts and actions could no longer concur. For example, the so-called royal prestige was one of the things Xie Lian hated. If they couldn't agree, it was best to stay far away. Every time he returned to the palace, he spent more time conversing with his mother, and never had any heart-to-hearts with his father. The two never took the initiative to talk to each other, and it was always the queen who mediated between them. The father and son had maintained this frozen relationship for many months, and now, with Xie Lian stubbornly refusing to back down, the king said, "Very well, take his place if you must. Let's see if you can actually withstand it." "Of course I can," Xie Lian retaliated. The queen saw the two of them butting heads again and anxiously said, "Why must it be like this?" Just then, Feng Xin, who hadn't spoken a word, suddenly raised his left arm and struck down on his right. There was a loud crack. The crowd was startled and looked to the sound and saw his right arm was dropped limply, exactly like Xie Rong's. Xie Lian was both shocked and furious. "Feng Xin!" Gold sweat dripped down Feng Xin's forehead, and without a word he knelt down before Xie Rong and kowtowed 3 times. Xie Rong was feeling rather proud and laughed out loud. "Alright, I guess I'll forgive you. Why couldn't you have done this earlier?" Even though his arm was broken too, when he left he looked energized and refreshed, as if he'd fought a winning battle. As for Feng Xin, he was still kneeling on the ground, and Mu Qing stood on the sidelines watching, his expression gloomy, his thoughts unreadable. Xie Lian whipped around to face his father, yelling angrily, "You!" Feng Xin grabbed him with his left arm. "Your Highness!" The queen also put her hands on him to pull back. Xie Lian knew that Feng Xin had followed him since the age of 14 and was cared for deeply by the queen. He only did this because he couldn't bear to see the queen sad over the dispute between father and son. If Xie Lian threw a fit now, then Feng Xin's efforts would go to waste. So he swallowed his outrage, but the fire continued to burn within his heart. The king finally looked appeased and left with a grim expression. The queen had always liked Feng Xin. She sighed. "My child, we've wronged you." "Please, don't say that, your majesty. This was my duty," Feng Xin replied. Hearing this, Mu Qing's eyes squinted, like he'd snorted coldly. Xie Lian, however, closed his eyes. "Mother, if you really can't handle Qi Rong, then lock him up." The queen sighed, nodded, then shook her head, and then left too. Xie Lian asked for one of the imperial doctors to tend to Feng Xin's right arm and apologized. "Feng Xin, I'm sorry." Once the crowds had cleared, Feng Xin immediately changed face and clicked his tongue. "This is nothing. I dared hit him, so how could I be scared of his revenge?" After a pause, he revised. "Your Highness, of course it's right for you to discipline Qi Rong, but don't be resentful of His Majesty. His Majesty is the king and a figurehead of the older generation, so he thinks differently than we do. Seeing the two of you fight makes the queen sad. She has her difficulties too." And how could Xie Lian not know his mother's difficulties? And the mother of Qi Rong was the younger blood sister of the queen, and they got along very well. When she was young and immature, at the first bloom of romance, she thirsted for freedom, listened to the words of honey, and broke off a good engagement to elope with a bodyguard in the palace. Who knew the one she'd chosen was villainous? One who was born of nobility was stuffed into a doghouse-like shack, and after only a year, the villain revealed his true nature, drunken and violent. After Qi Rong was born, he became even more abusive. Finally, the mother couldn't take it anymore, and when Qi Rong turned 5, she took him and ran away from home. Because she had become a royal scandal, she closed the door and no longer stepped foot outside. She spent the rest of her life in grim depression, only showing particular love and devotion to her son. During an upheaval, Qi Rong's mother lost her life saving the queen, and before she passed, she asked Xie Lian's mother to look after Qi Rong. Of course the queen did her utmost. However, it was still awkward raising someone else's son. Discipline was difficult, too strict, and it appeared to be abuse. Thinking of past love and friendship, she could hardly be so harsh. Too lax, and it'd turn out become the behavior you'd seen today, and without stricter restraints, it would only get worse in the future. The queen also wondered often. She raised Xie Lian and Qi Rong almost the same, so why were their characters so different? Just then, Xie Lian remembered suddenly there was a small child lying on the bed in the infirmary. He raised the bedside curtain to check, and the child was sitting up, looking like he was trying to peek out of some crack to watch. The moment Xie Lian raised the curtain, he laid down obediently. Xie Lian said, "Did we scare you with the fight just now? Don't let it bother you. It has nothing to do with you." "Your Highness, the little kid's wounds have been tended to. Now he only needs quiet rest," one of the imperial guards said. Doctors said. Xie Lian dropped his head slightly. "Thank you for your hard work." He bent down again to ask, "Where do you live? I'll take you home." The child shook his head. "No home." Feng Xin approached, holding the arm that was now in a sling. "No home? So he really is a beggar?" Seeing the child was emaciated and small, his clothes filthy and unkempt, it wasn't impossible that he had no home to return to. They couldn't possibly leave him in the palace or throw him out on the streets. Xie Lian pondered a moment, then said, "If that's the case, let's bring him back with us to Mount Taisong." Unexpectedly, Mu Qing suddenly spoke up. "He's lying." I wonder what he's lying about. Very interesting things happening. You can see all the issues coming to a head with the character of Mu Qing and his poor background and how he sees the royal family. Feng Xin, not quite being royal, but still having that nobility that gives him a sense of loyalty to the royal situation. The queen and her sister and her feelings about her two kids, kinda. The king and the, Xie Lian butting heads because they're so different. Like, there's a lot going on, and it's all gonna get so much worse, and so much more complicated. We're gonna stop there today. We will be back with the story next Monday. Tomorrow will be, Digital Devil Story, that one. Thanks for listening. If you haven't subscribed to the new channel, you should do so. We reached 100 people. I'm so happy. Go little channel. Yay. I'll be back to stream Dishonored after I eat lunch. Probably an hour and a half-ish, I don't know. What else? The Silent Hill 2 book should be available soon. I'm waiting on the second version, text to be approved and then printed. I think that's everything. Really. I don't know that I've got much more. Yeah, I think that's it for now. More Word of Honor soon. We'll probably wait until Wednesday, maybe, and just watch it all in one go, because, we stopped on episode 13, so we have 14, 15, I think 16 came out today, and then 17, 18. Oh my god. The Chinese stream is very, very close to being over. I think they're on episode, 33, and I've seen a bunch of spoilers, and oh my god, so much is happening, and I'm so worried. I just want it to end happily. Please. That's one of the books I think we should read. It's very, very short, so I may add it at some point. If I can find a way. Maybe when we finish Digital Devil Story. I mean, that'll make it 4 Chinese web novels we're reading. But I want to read Faraway Wanderers so much. Maybe I'll just add a Saturday or something. Thanks again for listening. Thanks to all members who aren't members of this channel, but you're members of the other one or of Patreon. Thank you so much. Are the Word of Honor... Oh, we don't stream them. We watch Word of Honor through Discord. If you want to join the Discord, we watch movies and stuff all the time. It's a lot of fun. Yeah, it's gonna be sad, but also good. It looks like so far Word of Honor is going for, a really heartfelt, but ultimately, good ending. It's, the characters keep doing really sweet and heartfelt and sad things for each other, but it keeps working out, Very self-sacrificing, but it ends up okay. But there's still 2 more episodes, and things could go wrong. I think I know what's gonna happen, but we'll wait and see if I'm right. I think they come out this week, so we may know soon. But yeah, join the Discord if you want to watch stuff with us. It's a lot of fun. Very goofy. Phil makes horrible jokes. You know how it is. I will see you guys next time. Bye.